The scene opens with a dark and stormy night. The camera focuses on the relentless downpour of rain hitting the windshield of a speeding car. Inside the vehicle, 17-year-old Emma Thompson sits in the passenger seat, her expression a mix of anger and frustration. Her phone buzzes on the seat beside her, flashing "Mom" on the screen. The tension in the car is palpable. Emma has just had a heated argument with her mother, Sarah, and is now driving recklessly, her emotions clouding her judgment. Her tears of frustration mingled with the rain that splattered against the window. She swipes at her phone, her anger growing as she fights to control her emotions. A flash of lightning lights up the night sky, briefly blinding Emma. She tries to see the road again, but the heavy rain makes it hard to see. The car starts to skid as Emma attempts to steer it back on track, but the wet road makes it difficult. Emma's face shows pure panic as she grips the steering wheel tightly. The car swerves wildly, the tires screech loudly against the roaring storm. In a terrifying moment, the car spins and crashes into a guardrail. The crash is severe, throwing the car into the air before it lands on its side, damaged and smoking. A passing driver spots the wreckage and pulls over. The driver, a middle-aged man, races to the car, his face filled with urgency. He struggles to open the mangled door, finally managing to pry it open with great effort. The rain pours down on him as he carefully pulls Emma from the car, checking her pulse and breathing with a concerned look. The scene shifts to an ambulance approaching, its flashing lights cutting through the rain and darkness. Paramedics quickly get out and rush to the wreckage with their medical gear. They move swiftly and expertly, working to stabilize Emma and carefully place her on a stretcher. Despite the urgency, they communicate with each other in short, professional phrases. Emma is then gently loaded into the ambulance. Her condition is serious but stable for now. Doctors and nurses move quickly and efficiently, attending to patients and coordinating their efforts. The steady beeping of heart monitors and occasional urgent calls create a backdrop of organized chaos. Dr. Michael Hartman, a skilled trauma surgeon who had just finished his shift, walks into the ER with a determined look on his face. Even though it's late at night, he's alert and ready for action. A nurse quickly briefs him on the latest emergency case, a young girl named Emma Thompson who was in a severe car accident. Michael listens carefully as the nurse explains Emma's injuries: a concussion, multiple fractures, and internal bleeding. She hands him Emma's file, and Michael skims through it, noting her age and the seriousness of her condition. When he sees her last name, Thompson, he has a brief flash of recognition, but pushes it aside, focusing on the urgent need to save her. The room is brightly lit, with surgical lights casting a harsh glare. Michael's team, including a scrub nurse and an anesthesiologist, prepares for the surgery with practiced efficiency. Michael puts on his surgical scrubs, mask, and gloves, and his face shows intense concentration. The team quickly sets up the necessary tools and makes sure everything is ready for the operation. As they start the surgery, Michael's focus is unwavering. The operating table is surrounded by bright lights, and the room is filled with the sounds of surgical instruments and the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Michael works meticulously, carefully addressing Emma's injuries and navigating the complexities of the surgery. Throughout the operation, Michael's thoughts occasionally drift to the name Thompson, reminding him of his ex-girlfriend from college, Sarah Thompson. Meanwhile, in a quiet restaurant in a nearby town, Sarah Thompson is enjoying dinner with some friends, unaware of the nightmare about to unfold. Sarah's phone buzzes on the table, but amidst the noise and laughter, she misses the call. After a few moments, she notices the missed notification and picks up her phone, casually checking her voicemail. As she listens to the message, her face slowly loses color. The voice on the other end is calm but urgent. It's from the hospital, informing her that her daughter Emma has been in a serious car accident and is in critical condition. Sarah's heart skips a beat as the words sink in, and a wave of panic grips her. For a moment, she feels frozen, her mind racing but unable to process the information. Emma, her daughter, an accident? The world around her seems to blur as her thoughts spiral into fear. Without saying a word to her friends, Sarah abruptly stands up, knocking over her chair in her rush. She barely mumbles an apology as she grabs her coat and purse, her movements frantic, Her friends call after her, concerned, but Sarah doesn't stop to explain. Her only thought is getting to the hospital. Every second feels like an eternity as she rushes out into the stormy night. As she drives to the hospital, the rain continues to pour, mirroring the dread building inside her. She frantically calls the hospital, demanding to know more, but no one can tell her anything. Emma is still in surgery. As the hospital finally comes into view, Sarah's heart pounds in her chest. She pulls into the parking lot, barely able to park her car straight, and rushes toward the entrance. The storm outside is nothing compared to the storm of emotions inside her. Back in the operating room, the intense surgery that had been going on for hours was finally over. The tension in the room eases as the medical team, led by Dr. Michael Hartman, stabilizes Emma. Her vital signs have normalized, and the immediate danger is past. Michael feels a rush of relief wash over him as he steps back from the operating table. His body is exhausted, his mind weary from the concentration and effort it took to pull Emma through such a complex procedure. But for now, the worst is over. As he peels off his surgical gloves and washes his hands, a nurse approaches him with Emma's file. Michael glances at it out of routine, confirming post-op details, medications, and updates for the recovery team. His eyes move swiftly across the lines of information, but then something makes him stop. The name in the emergency contact section, the name they just added to the file after calling Sarah, jumps out at him. Sarah Thompson. Michael freezes. His hand trembles slightly as he stares at the name. His breath catches in his throat, and the room seems to narrow around him. Sarah Thompson. It's a name he hasn't thought about in years, yet it's one he could never forget. Memories flood his mind in an instant. Sarah, his college sweetheart, the woman he had loved so deeply. She was the one who had made him feel alive in a way no one else ever had. They had shared dreams, laughter, and plans for the future, but life had pulled them apart. He had pursued his medical career, and Sarah had drifted away, their paths diverging, leaving him with a hole in his heart that he had tried to bury with time. Now seeing her name attached to this young girl, a girl whose life he had just saved, brings back a rush of emotions he thought were long gone. His heart begins to race as his mind tries to piece together the puzzle. The gears in his brain turn slowly, and then it hits him. He looks at the details on the file more closely. Emma's age, the timeline. The realization dawns on him like a tidal wave crashing over him and leaving him breathless. Could Emma be his daughter? His chest tightens as the unthinkable begins to take shape in his mind. Sarah must have had Emma not long after they parted ways. Had she kept this from him all these years? Michael feels a mix of shock, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal. But beyond that, a different emotion begins to rise within him: fear. If Emma is his daughter, he has missed out on her entire life, her childhood, her first words, her milestones. And now she's lying in a hospital bed, having just survived a terrible accident, without him ever knowing she existed. The room feels suffocating as these thoughts swirl in Michael's mind. His body is still, but inside, his emotions are a storm. How could Sarah have kept something like this from him? And if Emma really is his daughter, what does that mean for them now? He stares at the name on the file, trying to calm his racing thoughts, but the gravity of what he's just discovered is overwhelming. For a moment, Michael doesn't know what to do. The shock of the possibility that this young girl, whom he had just fought so hard to save, could be his daughter is paralyzing. He leans against the counter, trying to steady himself as the full weight of the situation sinks in. He has to see Sarah. He has to hear the truth from her. Sarah rushes into the hospital, heart pounding, her mind racing with thoughts of Emma's accident. The fluorescent lights in the hallway blur as she makes her way toward the ICU. In her panic, she collides with someone, a tall figure wearing scrubs. Sarah stumbles back, disoriented, but as she lifts her gaze, her breath catches in her throat. Standing before her is Dr. Michael Hartman, the man she thought she'd never see again. His face mirrors her shock, but there's something deeper in his eyes, an emotion she can't quite place. "Michael," she whispers, almost like she's seeing a ghost. He blinks, momentarily speechless, and then utters her name. "Sarah?" There's a long, tense silence as the realization that they're standing here together after all these years sets in. Michael's mind races. He remembers Sarah clearly, his first love, the woman he thought about for years after they parted ways. But right now, it's not just about seeing her again. It's about the young girl he just operated on. The girl whose name is Emma Thompson, Sarah's last name. Sarah is Emma? Your daughter? Michael asks cautiously, trying to keep his voice steady, even though his heart is pounding. Sarah's face tightens, her eyes darting away from him. She's clearly shaken, but she doesn't answer his question. Instead, she mutters, "I need to see her." Where is she? Her voice cracks with urgency, and she tries to push past him, desperate to get to Emma. Michael grabs her arm gently but firmly. "Wait, Sarah, I need to know. Emma, she's..." His words trail off as his mind wrestles with the pieces falling into place. His grip loosens slightly, but his eyes are fixed on her. Sarah stiffens at his touch, her face hardening. "Not now, Michael," she says sharply, pulling her arm free. "I need to see my daughter. That's all that matters right now." She refuses to make eye contact, her body language screaming avoidance. She's hiding something, and Michael knows it. But before he can say anything else, Sarah turns and strides toward the ICU doors, leaving him standing in the hallway, stunned. He watches her disappear into Emma's room, the unanswered question hanging in the air like a weight he can't shake. Michael's chest tightens. Something is wrong, more than just the accident. His instincts tell him that there's more to Emma than Sarah is letting on, but now isn't the time to push her. After a few minutes, Michael watches through the glass as Sarah stands beside Emma, holding her hand. The beeping of the heart monitor is the only sound in the sterile room. Emma is pale but breathing steadily. Sarah's hand trembles as she brushes a strand of hair from Emma's forehead, tears welling in her eyes. Michael hesitates for a moment, unsure if he should intrude on this private moment, but the gnawing need for answers overcomes him. He quietly enters the room. Sarah doesn't turn to face him, but she knows he's there. His presence feels heavier than the air around them. "I did everything I could," Michael says softly, trying to ease the tension. "She's stable now?" Sarah nods, her back still to him. "Thank you," she whispers, her voice barely audible. Silence fills the room, thick with unsaid words. Michael can feel it, the weight of the truth hanging between them, pressing down on him like an invisible force. Finally, Sarah turns to him, her eyes red but determined. She takes a deep breath, as if bracing herself for what comes next. "You saved her life, Michael," she says, her voice breaking, "and you didn't even know. She's yours." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Michael's breath catches, and his world tilts for a moment. He stumbles back, gripping the edge of the bed to steady himself. "What?" he whispers, his voice hoarse. He looks from Sarah to Emma, his mind racing to catch up. "Emma, she's my daughter? How could you not tell me?" Michael's voice is barely above a whisper, but the hurt is clear. The realization that he has been a father all this time, without ever knowing it, overwhelms him. He struggles to make sense of it all, his emotions battling between anger, sorrow, and confusion. Sarah's face softens with guilt. "I'm so sorry, Michael," she says quietly. "I thought it was for the best. I didn't want to complicate your life. But now..." Her voice trails off as she glances at Emma, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on both of them. Michael looks at Emma, the girl he now knows is his daughter. The shock of Sarah's revelation lingers in the room as Michael and Sarah stand by Emma's bed in the ICU. The sound of the machines beeping in the background adds to the tense atmosphere. Michael's thoughts are spinning, and old emotions he's tried to bury for years start to resurface. He takes a step back, feeling as if his whole world has changed. Sarah's confession that Emma is his daughter hits him hard, like an emotional punch he wasn't prepared for. "How could you not tell me?" Michael's voice breaks the silence, his words sharp with hurt and confusion. His eyes searched Sarah's face, looking for answers, for some explanation that might make sense of this. "I had a right to know, Sarah. I deserved to know. How? How could you not tell me?" Sarah looks down, her face etched with guilt and sorrow. She steps closer to Emma, as if seeking comfort from her daughter's presence. "I know, Michael. I know," she says softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was doing the right thing. Back then, I thought it was for the best. Your career was taking off, and I didn't want to complicate things. I thought I could handle it on my own." Michael runs a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "You thought you could handle it? You thought you could just decide that I didn't get to know I had a daughter? His voice rises slightly, the anger simmering beneath the surface. He turns away, pacing the small room, trying to process everything. Sarah's eyes fill with tears as she watches him. I was scared, she admits, her voice trembling. I was scared that if you knew, it would change everything. I didn't want to be the reason your life took a different turn. And by the time I realized how wrong I was, too much time had passed. I didn't know how to tell you. Michael stops pacing, his back still turned to her. The weight of Sarah's words sinks in, but they do little to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside him. He feels an ache for all the years he's lost, for all the moments he could have had with Emma, the milestones he missed, the birthdays, the first steps, the first words. It's a loss he didn't even know existed until now, and it cuts deep. He turns to face Sarah again, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and frustration. You didn't have the right to make that choice for me. You should have told me, Sarah. I would have wanted to know. Tears stream down Sarah's face as she nods, acknowledging her mistake. I'm so sorry, Michael, she whispers. I thought I was protecting both of you, but I was wrong. I didn't want to complicate your life, and I ended up making things worse. Please believe me, I never meant to hurt you. Michael softens slightly, seeing the remorse in her eyes, but the pain of the situation still lingers. He walks over to Emma's bedside and gently touches her hand, feeling the connection that he's only just discovered. The room is quiet again, the sounds of the machines fading into the background. I don't know how to fix this, Michael says quietly, his voice barely audible. But I'm here now, and I want to be part of her life. Sarah watches him, her heart heavy with regret, but also with a small glimmer of hope. She needs you, Michael, she says softly, more than ever. Both of them waited for an hour in the waiting area. As the tension simmers, a nurse informs them that Emma has woken up. Both Sarah and Michael rush to her side. Emma is weak but conscious, unaware of the emotional storm brewing between her mother and the doctor. Sarah leans over, comforting her, while Michael watches from the door, still unable to fully comprehend what this means for him. Will Emma know the truth? Will Sarah allow him into their lives? He grapples with these unanswered questions, his heart torn between the past he's lost and the future that could have been. If you find this story interesting, make sure to hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon to get the latest update.